It's what you're holding on to so tightly is maybe preventing you from manifesting your dreams into reality. If you just let go, then you create the space and opportunity for those dreams to come into fruition. In what ways are you being hard on yourself? In what ways are you being overly critical of yourself? We want to release those frequencies with the full moon in Virgo. Take a button down. Take a button down. Let your hair down. Close your eyes. Take your hands off the wheel. Put on some music. Dance around. Stop holding on so tightly. Welcome to the Weekly Transit, your guide to understanding the current planetary and astral alignments. Together, we'll explore how to harness these cosmic frequencies, empowering you to reach your highest potential as you navigate the days ahead. I'm your host, Adrien. Welcome to the Weekly Transit. This is the week of March 10th to the 16th, where we will be covering 5 transits highlighted by the full moon in Virgo and Mercury beginning its retrograde transit in Aries. Before we get into the transits, I want to talk about the Oscars. I didn't watch the Oscars. I haven't seen any of the films that were nominated for the Oscars, but I definitely want to. It really looks like there are some interesting films to look into. I did see Dune. I saw Dune Part 2, but I haven't seen anything else. So, but the reason why I want to get into this is because these public figures are such a great way for us to understand and learn the language of astrology. They have put themselves out there into the public frame. They've shown us who they are. And if we don't have their birth time, we have their birth date. And that gives us some insight into who they are and how the planets and stars shape them, which gives us a deeper understanding of the language of astrology and ultimately a deeper understanding of ourselves. But before I dive into the Oscars, I do want to make a couple announcements just about the podcast in terms of the people that I'm interviewing on the podcast. I hope you enjoyed my interview with Krista Rauschenberg this last week, the Akashic Records reader, breathwork specialist who is a host of her own podcast, The Beginner's Guide to the Third Eye. You can check that out anywhere where you listen to podcasts. I highly recommend Krista's podcast, Beginner's Guide to the Third Eye. But such an interesting, inspiring conversation with Krista to learn how she became an Akashic Records reader. The week before that, the amazing Lise Richard, CEO, founder, chef, creator of Tofino Hot Sauce. Another fun, interesting conversation there if you missed that. And this week, we've got Jennifer Paulo, which was another fun conversation for me. Very interesting conversation. Interesting because we get into religion. Jennifer, well, like you, me, anyone else who's probably listening to this podcast is interested in the esoteric arts. But what makes Jennifer unique is she also has a very strong religious background. She is a follower of Christ. And she breaks all the stereotypes of somebody that you think would be a follower of Christ. We talk about being called a Christian because that term Christian, it brings such stigma, such stereotypes. So, You know, I can totally relate and empathize because I grew up in a very religious household. But we get into all that in the podcast. I usually get a lot of pushback from people that are Christian when I talk about astrology, but not with Jen. No, she embraces it because she's like me. She understands how astrology plays into the Bible. And it's not something that's against the Bible or against religion or Christianity. Though religion or Christianity may see it as a threat because they want to corner the market on helping people. And I see, astrology, religion as not being in competition with one another. They can complement and support each other. So, very interesting conversation with Jennifer. She has a blog called The Healers Are Rising. I'll put the link to that in the show notes in the episode with her. But it's a very interesting, it's a very inspiring blog that she writes every week and sends out in an email, just sharing her perspective on life and the world. And she's just somebody who really uplifts the people around her. And that's what Jennifer's about. So I hope you enjoy my conversation with Jennifer. Now, getting into the Oscars, a couple people who jumped out at me for the Oscars were Adrien Brody and Zoe Saldana, because I have both of their birth times. So immediately I'm like, yes, okay, they won. So I've got their birth times. Let's dive in and really, understand who they are and their through their astrological codes. Zoe Saldana, if you look at her chart, you're like, wow, okay, that's an actor. That's a natural performer. She is a triple extrovert with the sun in Gemini, the ascendant in Leo, which is the performer, and the moon in the 5th house, which is associated with the 5th sign, Leo, in Sagittarius. The sun's in the 11th house, which is more that extroverted frequency because that's Aquarius. So a lot of air and fire in Zoe Saldana's chart. She was also born with Pluto aligning with the ascendant, so that gives her the ability to transform. And to be an actor, you can't just be a performer in that extroverted frequency, but you also, to be of the status of her level of acting, you have to be able to transform into these different characters. But the one aspect in her chart that really jumps out to me is her moon aligning with her ascendant. She was born with the moon at 9 degrees in Sagittarius. The ascendant was at 9 degrees in Aries. So they're both at 9 degrees. That forms a trine, a fire trine. And if you're performing, you've got to be able to show your emotions. We've got to be able to see your emotions. And so Zoe Saldana was born with the moon aligning with her face, her body, her personality, the essence of her soul. And so it's no mystery that when you look and see other people who were born with the moon trine the ascendant who've also won the Oscar, Barbra Streisand, Denzel Washington, Dustin Hoffman, Ingrid Bergman, Carl Malden, Robert De Niro, Shelley Winters. All individuals who were born with the moon trine the ascendant, like Zoe Saldana, where we're able to see what they're feeling. But if you go even further to anyone who was born with the moon aligning with the ascendant, Cary Grant, Goldie Hawn, Jack Nicholson, Javier Bardem, Jeremy Renner, Kathy Bates, Matthew McConaughey, Michael Fassbender, Nicolas Cage, Susan Sarandon, William Holden, Yul Brynner, and Adrien Brody were all born with the moon aligning with the ascendant. Now, Adrien Brody was born with the moon in the 1st house, So not only is it conjunct with his ascendant, the moon in Virgo, the ascendant in Virgo, but it's also in the first house. Adrien Brody was born with Pluto in the first house, giving him that ability to transform. His sun is in Aries. His Venus is in Aries. He was born with the sun conjunct Venus, which gives him a really strong connection to his senses, his likes and dislikes, his understanding of value and self-worth. He was born with the sun and Venus in the 8th house, which is associated with the 8th sign, Scorpio, which is ruled by Pluto. So again, that ability to transform from himself into a character. The moon in Virgo, the ascendant in Virgo, that gives him an eye for detail. Being able to really understand a character in a practical way that makes it feel real to the audience. But that moon in the first house, when you think about other people that were born with the moon in the first house who won the Oscar, Brendan Fraser, Benicio del Toro, George C. Scott, Leonardo DiCaprio, Sidney Poitier, Audrey Hepburn. These are all people that were born with the moon in the first house. We're able to see what they're feeling. It's a part of their personality. Were you born with the moon aligning with the ascendant? Were you born with the moon in the first house? You're maybe somebody that people say, oh, they wear their heart on their sleeves or their emotions on their sleeve. We can see how they're feeling. We always know how they're feeling. I mean, this list of performers that were born with the moon in the first house, aside from just winning the Oscar, but Antonio Banderas, Whitney Houston, Peter Dinklage, Andie MacDowell, Priyanka Chopra, Daryl Hannah, Kurt Russell, his son Wyatt Russell, Tanya Tucker, Don Henley, Jim Caviezel, Lucille Ball, Val Kilmer, Alicia Silverstone, and Michael Jackson were all born with the moon in the first house. When you think of the moon in Cancer, which is another position of power because that's the sign that the moon rules, is Cancer. The Oscar winners who were born with the moon in Cancer, Allison Janney, Charlton Heston, Clark Gable, Marion Cotillard, Maximilian Schell, Olivia de Havilland, Penelope Cruz, Robert Duvall, Sean Penn, Tatum O'Neal, William Holden were all born with the moon in Cancer. So congratulations to Adrien Brody for winning the Best Actor Award for The Brutalist, and congratulations to Zoe Saldana for winning the Best Supporting Role for an Actress in Amelia Perez. Just a fun fact that I also saw in looking up Adrien Brody, as I realized his partner is a woman named Georgina Chapman, who's the ex-wife of Harvey Weinstein. And when I was looking her up, I'm like, oh, wait a second. She was born on April 14th. Wait, Adrien Brody was born on April 14th. So Georgina Chapman was born on Adrien Brody's 3rd birthday. He was born April 14th, 1973. She was born April 14th, 1976. But it made me also think of Michael Douglas, his wife, Catherine Zeta-Jones, was born on his 25th birthday. Catherine Zeta-Jones was born on Michael Douglas's 25th birthday. And then Robert Duvall, another Oscar winner, his wife, Luciana Pedrazo, was born on his 41st birthday. Wow. Robert Duvall's wife was born on his 41st birthday. Now, I celebrate them. I congratulate them. Michael Douglas, Robert Duvall, they have been married to their wives for 20 plus years. So obviously something's working, but it just blows my mind because it's like these Hollywood actors, that just they love being in the spotlight, or they thrive in the spotlight. They literally, it's like they married themselves. Their partner is like an alter ego of themselves because they share the same birthday. But kudos to them. Congratulations to them. I'm so happy for them and I celebrate them. Now, one other aspect I wanted to get into for the Oscars was the directors. Now, the directors are really interesting to me because the first one I looked at was, okay, Sean Baker. Who's Sean Baker? I'd never heard of him before. Now I look at his movies. I'm like, I've never seen these movies. I want to see these movies. I watched the previews to a bunch of his films. I'm like, these look interesting. I want to check them out. But he won the Best Director for his role directing the film Anora, which is fascinating to me because it's about a stripper. And so it made me think of Ingrid. I reached out to Ingrid. She had not seen the film yet, so I'm curious to hear what she says about it whenever she does see the film. But I'm also interested in seeing Anora because it features several actors that are Armenian. And of course, I'm Armenian, so I'm like, okay, interesting. But I got to look up Sean Baker. What's his birth time, or, when's his birthday? And he was born on February 26, 1971. We don't have the time, but we know that the sun was in Pisces. The moon was in Pisces. Mercury was either in Aquarius or Pisces. But either way, Mercury was aligning with Neptune. So the planet of the conscious mind, Mercury, aligning with the planet of the unconscious, Neptune. Now, he is already born with the sun and moon in Pisces. When I think of Pisces, I think of film, television, fantasy, telling a story. Sean Baker was also open in an interview I read with him where he was open about sharing his challenges with an opioid addiction years ago. He's long since been sober, I think, but he was open that he had an opioid addiction, which, Pisces rules drugs and alcohol. So, but that aspect between Mercury aligning with Neptune, it just made me think of myself because I always wanted to be a writer, director. That was one of my dreams and didn't come to fruition because I was meant to be doing this, the podcast and sharing the knowledge of the language of astrology. But I look at my chart and I'm like, yeah, Mercury isn't aligning with Neptune. And I always felt so challenged. I would have these amazing fantasies, oh my God, I can see the movie. This is the greatest idea. I love it. It's going to be incredible. And then when it came time to actually take that fantasy and put it into reality, it became so difficult. So difficult. I mean, it's difficult regardless. I mean, Sean Baker, I think I heard him say that he spent 15 years developing Anora. But, I could spend 15 years trying to develop something and it not be that. So, but what's fascinating is I went and I looked at the other directors. So there's Brady Corbett, who directed The Brutalist, James Mangold, who directed A Complete Unknown. So The Brutalist was the film that Adrien Brody won Best Actor for him. For A Complete Unknown is the Timothée Chalamet movie about Bob Dylan, which interestingly enough, Bob Dylan was born with Mercury aligning with Neptune, which makes sense because he's somebody who's able to take fantasy and music and put words to it in a meaningful way that inspires people. Jacques Audiard, the director of Amelia Perez, and Coralie Fargiet. Hope I'm saying that right. Coralie Fargiet directed The Substance. All of these individuals were born with Mercury aligning with Neptune. Sean Baker was born with Mercury squaring Neptune. Brady Corbett was born with Mercury trine Neptune. James Mangold was born with Mercury sextile Neptune. Jacques Audiard was born with Mercury opposite Neptune. And Coralie Fargiet was born with Mercury conjunct Neptune. So you've got literally all 5 of the aspects between all 5 people that were nominated for Best Director. Just fascinating to me, because they have the ability to take the fantasy and bring it into their conscious mind and then communicate it into reality in a way that other people can understand. Is that you? Were you born with Mercury aligning with Neptune? Maybe you're meant to be a storyteller. Here's a list of other people that were born with Mercury aligning with Neptune, and not all of them are film directors. There's a couple that are in there, but these are storytellers, whether they're comedians, musicians, fashion designers. They're telling a story. They're taking a fantasy and bringing it into reality. Andy Kaufman, Arthur Miller, Bob Dylan, Brian De Palma, Cat Stevens, Christian Dior, Conan O'Brien, Ernest Hemingway, Garth Brooks, Henry Mancini, Herbie Hancock, Jimi Hendrix, Johnny Cash, Mel Gibson, Miles Davis, Robbie Robertson, Robert Altman, Sarah McLachlan, Terrence McNally, and Wolfgang Amadeus Mozart were all born with Mercury aligning with Neptune. Is also fascinating, before we move to the transits, I do have the birth time for Jacques Ardier. Jacques Ardier? Am I saying that right? I don't know. I'm trying. He was born with Mercury in the 3rd house, Venus, Jupiter, the Sun, all in the 3rd house. So a master communicator. He was born with Mercury squaring the Ascendant and Neptune squaring the Moon. So that also brings that emotion to the unconscious, or the dreams to emotion, to communicating and putting it into reality. But the most interesting aspect in his chart in relation to the film that he directed. So when I think, you've probably heard me say this before, when I think of Aquarius, that's the sign that represents homosexuality, because it's non-conformity. It's about being unique, being different, not being like anyone else. It's ruled by Uranus. Uranus is the planet of the unexpected. It's the modern ruler of Aquarius, and it represents non-conformity, being different. And Jacques Ardier was born with Uranus opposite the Ascendant. So in a sense, that makes him like an Aquarius rising, but it makes him a very non-conforming individual, where he is willing to take risk and be different than others, or to celebrate the differences in others. And his film that he directed, Emilia Perez, is a very non-conforming film. It follows a Mexican cartel leader who aims to disappear and transition into a woman. That is a very Uranus type of film. So congratulations to all of these artists for their accomplishments in bringing together such great works of art and sharing them with the world. I celebrate each and every one of you. Now, getting into the transits this week, the theme of the week. The theme of the week is releasing control. Releasing control because the full moon in Virgo. The full moon is a release, and Virgo is about control. But before we get to the full moon, the first transit is Mercury, the planetary ruler of Virgo, forms a conjunction with Venus retrograde in Aries at 8 degrees. So Mercury is still moving forward. Venus is moving backwards. They're passing each other like two ships in the night. They're aligning in conjunction with each other pretty much all week, from Saturday, March 8th to Friday, March 14th, with the exact conjunction occurring Tuesday, March 11th. This is a theme that we've been talking about a lot these past few weeks with Venus and Aries and now Mercury and Aries. It's really pushing everything out into the open, helping you articulate who you are, what you want, and what you're willing to give in return. So Tuesday, which is Martes, which is the day of Mars, Marte, and Mars is the planetary ruler of Aries. That's the day this conjunction occurs. There may be some fire in the conversations that you're having with those you're in relationship with. Whether it's a lover, a friend, or a business partner, you're meant to be transparent, to be authentic, to advocate for what you want, to be unapologetically you. It's okay to be you. That's what this Pluto in Aquarius is all about. It's helping us come out of our collective closets and just show us who you are. Who are you? Be yourself. That's what these artists help us do. They have the courage to be out there performing. I want to just touch back on Adrien, Brody, and Zoe Saldana because I forgot to mention, I wanted to mention their North Nodes. It's very interesting because I think they're both following their North Node. I mean, Zoe Saldana, she won Best Supporting Actress. And she really thrives in these ensemble roles. The film she was in, Emilia Perez, is an ensemble film. She is famous for being in the cast of Guardians of the Galaxy, Avatar, the TV show she's on, Lioness. These are all ensemble performances. That's where she thrives. And it's no question, no wonder why she thrives in these ensemble roles is because she was born with the North Node in Libra in the third house, which is associated with the third sign, which is Gemini. Her North Node also aligns with her Venus in Leo in the 12th house. So she is here to be the star, but the star of an ensemble, where it's not all about her. It's about her being a conduit of information, of connecting, communicating, and creating balance, harmony, equanimity, and fairness in these creative dynamics that she's a part of. She's clearly doing that in her work, and because of that, she's reaching the pinnacle of her work by winning the Oscar. Adrien Brody was born with the North Node in Capricorn in the 4th house, which is an interesting placement because the 4th house is associated with the 4th sign, which is Cancer. Adrien Brody's South Node is in Cancer in the 10th house, which is associated with the 10th house, which is Capricorn. So how do we figure that out, Scott? That doesn't make it. So I don't. What am I supposed to do? Well, do what Adrien Brody's doing, because he's clearly following his North Node. When you think about his role, he's won the Oscar twice, and both times he won the Oscar playing historical roles. I don't know if these were actual historical people, but the roles that he played took place in historical times, in World War II or shortly after World War II. So his soul's purpose is about building a lasting legacy through deep emotional and historical connections. It's not just about finding emotional grounding in his personal life, but it's also about honoring history, tradition, and real life legacies through his work. Because Capricorn is linked to history, structure, discipline, and legacy. And so his most aligned work involves deeply personal and historical rooted narratives, ones that require emotional depth. So it's like he's releasing the past and the emotion when it comes to his goals and ambitions, but he's embodying the emotion, the emotional depth when it has to do with creating a legacy of this work. That it's about, the emotion is about the work and not just being emotional. What's also interesting is I did a little research on Adrien Brody and found that, he's spent time cultivating a private, grounded life outside of Hollywood. He's immersed himself in art, design, and real estate. Capricorn rules real estate, and he's invested time creating homes and spaces that reflect his inner world rather than just chasing the next big film role. For example, Adrien Brody purchased and restored a historic stone farm estate in upstate New York, a project that took years of dedication. And rather than hiring a team to do all the work, he took an active approach. He took an active approach, an active hands-on approach, learning about construction, working with artisans, and embracing the craftsmanship involved in creating a timeless, grounded home. So, this careful, disciplined approach to shaping his environment is a direct embodiment of his fourth house Capricorn North Node. And that's why he is thriving. And that's why he is thriving in succeeding in what he's doing. So that brings us back to the transit. The first transit of the week is, who are you? What do you want? What do you want from the people in your life? What do you want for yourself? What are you willing to give in return? It's finding that clarity within yourself. And if there are conflicts that come up, don't run from the conflict. Engage. Engage so that you can bring to the surface what needs to be dealt with. Now, as this transit is occurring, there's another transit that's occurring right around the same time involving the sun, the planet of light, life, and vitality, transiting through Pisces, forms a conjunction with Saturn. So Mercury, the planet of communication, forms a conjunction with Venus, the planet of relationships, while the sun, the planet of vitality, forms a conjunction with Saturn, the planet of responsibility in Pisces. This is about taking responsibility for your dreams. What are your dreams? What are your fantasies? What do you desire for yourself? This is occurring Sunday to Friday, March 9th to the 14th, with the exact conjunction on March 12th. This week, is about getting deep with yourself. Really trying to understand who you are. Who am I? Who am I? What are my dreams? What are my fantasies? If I could do anything in the world, what would it be? And when that comes up and you think, well, I could never do that. That's impossible. Or I don't deserve that. Is there shame coming up? Guilt, regret, blame? Whatever's coming up there is what needs to be forgiven, Take responsibility for where you are holding yourself back. Because you think of these first two transits, Mercury conjunct Venus in Aries and the Sun conjunct Saturn and in Pisces, and we're really looking at where you are being held back by yourself. And then sometimes that is going to be manifested in your relationships. I'm being held back by myself, and it's creating conflict within my relationships. I'm unhappy with myself, and now there's conflict in my relationships. You need to take responsibility for your own unhappiness, for where you are feeling disappointed in yourself, disappointed in your relationship. Wherever that is, you need to bring it up. You need to bring it up. And then on Thursday, March 13th, we release it. That's the full moon in Virgo. At 11:54 p.m. on Thursday, March 13th, that's 11:54 p.m. Pacific time. So most people maybe that are listening to this, it's going to be March 14th technically, but it's going to be the night of the 13th if you live in the United States. But the full moon's a release. And this is the 6th full moon that has been right around 23 degrees. And you go back to the full moon in Aries in October was at 24 degrees. The full moon in Taurus was at 24 degrees. The full moon in Gemini was at 23. Full moon in Cancer at 23. Full moon in Leo at 24. And now the full moon in Virgo at 24. The full moon in Libra is going to be at 23. Did I say Virgo 24? I meant Virgo 23 if I said 24. I meant 23. The full moon in Aries was at 24, Taurus 24, Gemini 23, Cancer 23, Leo 24, Virgo 23, Libra 23. So what is in your astrological code at or around 23 degrees? That's getting hit directly by this full moon. What's also significant about this 23, 24 degrees is we go all the way back to October, and every single full moon is aligned with Uranus in Taurus. Because Uranus in Taurus has been hanging out at 26 to 23 degrees since the full moon in Aries back in October. Full moon in Taurus is, Uranus in Taurus is revolutionizing our relationship to the material. Uranus in Taurus is revolutionizing our relationship to the material. So you think of these sequences of Aries, Taurus, Gemini, Cancer, Leo, Virgo, Libra. Uranus in Taurus didn't really align with the full moon in Aries, but it did with Taurus, didn't with Gemini, did with Cancer, did with Leo, and did with Virgo. What does this all mean? Well, Virgo is mutable earth. It's symbolized by the Virgin. The lower frequency of Virgo can be associated with nitpicking or being overly critical, overly analytical. Virgos, they just want to improve. They see an area for improvement and they're mentioning that, this could be better. But this full moon is one of those times where it's like, just let it go. Wherever you're trying to control the outcome, the circumstances, Let it go. Now I think of the Sun conjunct Saturn in Pisces and taking responsibility for whatever's happening within your unconscious that is preventing you from truly being the best, most authentic version of yourself, is rooted in that need to control. And that need to control stems from a fear that if I don't control it, something bad's going to happen to me. The new moon in Pisces 2 weeks ago was about setting your intentions to cultivate faith. I think about my conversation with Jennifer Paulo this week, and we talk about faith. That's what Jesus was about, faith. Well, if you're constantly trying to control things, you have no faith. And if you have no faith, then there's no magic. I think of film. It's movie magic. It draws us into the unconscious. So we need to release control so that we can enjoy the magic that comes with having faith. Where are you Where do you feel like you're holding on so tight in your life? What are you squeezing onto in your life? It's what you're holding on to so tightly is maybe preventing you from manifesting your dreams into reality. If you just let go, then you create the space and opportunity for those dreams to come into fruition. In what ways are you being hard on yourself? In what ways are you being overly critical of yourself? We want to release those frequencies with the full moon in Virgo. Take a button down. Take a button down. Let your hair down. Close your eyes. Take your hands off the wheel. Put on some music, dance around. Stop holding on so tightly. You are already perfect. This is a time to let go and let God. Let the universe, whatever higher power you believe in, let it flow. Let the abundance flow to you. When you release control, you create the opening for abundance to flow to you. That urge for control is choking off the abundance, the flow. Now this happens around the same day as Mercury Retrograde in Aries, which is Friday, March 14th. Oh, and by the way, I will just say, just a reminder, if you want to know how the next new moon, full moon combination, which will be the new moon solar eclipse in Aries and the full moon in Libra, enroll in my moon cycle classes. And we'll get deep into how the lunar cycle will be affecting you and how to work with that energy to your benefit. Now, I was just thinking about the new moon solar eclipse in Aries because it's interesting. That's going to be at 9 degrees, which is exactly where Mercury Retrograde begins on Friday, March 14th. Mercury Retrograde begins at 9 degrees in Aries. It moved into its retrograde shadow on March 1st at 26 degrees in Pisces. The retrograde ends on March 29th, which is the same day as the new moon solar eclipse in Aries. So wild when you see it line up like this. And then Mercury moves out of its retrograde shadow on April 26th. So where Mercury is right now on March 14th is where it will be on April 26th. You think about Venus retrograde in Aries began at 10 degrees in Aries. Mercury retrograde begins at 9 degrees in Aries. The new moon solar eclipse begins at 9 degrees in Aries. So what's in your astrological code at 9 or 10 degrees in air and fire signs or cardinal signs? Fire is Aries, Leo, Sagittarius. Cardinal is, air is Libra, Aquarius, and Gemini. And then the cardinal signs are Aries and Libra, along with Cancer and Capricorn. So if you have anything around 8 to 10 degrees, 8 or 10 degrees in one of those 8 signs, there's something shifting for you right now. And it's interesting how the sequence of it, because it begins with Venus in Aries at 10 degrees. That's where Venus's retrograde began. Venus is the planet of the senses. So it's awakening your senses in terms of what you like, what you don't like, what is authentic to you. And then Mercury hits that point where it's like being able to communicate what's authentic to you, what is authentically you, what you like, what you don't like. And then it concludes with the new moon solar eclipse on March 29th. The same day that Mercury retrogrades back into Pisces. And that is coming to terms with your identity and your emotions. So it begins with the senses. It moves to the mind, and then the identity and the emotions. So Mercury is retrograde until April 7th. I think I might have said March 29th. March 29th is when Mercury moves back into Pisces, but Mercury goes direct on April 7th. So Mercury is retrograde from March 14th to April 7th. And during this period, we are getting clear about who we are how we express ourselves authentically, but then clear about who we are unconsciously. It's moving back and forth between Pisces and Aries, the unconscious and self-expression. The unconscious and self-expression. So during this Mercury retrograde, especially from March 1st to the 29th, when Mercury is retrograding back through Aries, we want to be direct, we want to be transparent, we want to be authentic, we want to be advocating for ourselves. When Mercury transits back into Pisces, we want to find that compassion for ourselves and empathy for others. What is your relationship with yourself right now? That's what this Mercury retrograde is teaching us. What is your relationship with yourself? How would you like to improve your relationship with yourself in the way that you communicate to yourself and in the way you communicate to others? Because the more direct and authentic you can be with others, the more you're going to receive something that is reflecting you in a positive way. Because it's you. Because it's authentically you. But give yourself time to slow down, especially this week. As we release control, we want to slow down. Because if you take your hands off the wheel, you don't want to be going 100 miles an hour. You want to be going 2 miles an hour, 5 miles an hour. Take your hands off the wheel, you want to be going slow. So slow down. Give yourself time to think what's going on beneath the surface of your mind. Take responsibility for your fears and insecurities, the guilt, the shame, the regret, the blame. And release those critical thoughts. Release that control. Mercury retrograde is encouraging us to slow down so that we can release control. So that we can see ourselves, so that we can recognize what's going on beneath the surface of our mind. And as we move to the final transit, the Sun, continuing through Pisces, aligns with Uranus in Taurus at 24 degrees. This is Tuesday to Saturday, March 11th to the 15th, with the exact sextile occurring on Friday, March 14th. So this is supporting the revolution of your self-worth and values, the reimagination of who you are, how you see yourself beneath the surface of your mind. You are being supported here. Supported in recognizing how being different, being yourself, is the gift. Being different, being yourself, is the gift. That's why when I look at these film directors, I'm like, that's what I wanted to do. And then I see they all have Mercury aligning with Neptune. I'm like, that's why they're able to do what they're able to do. Which is not my gift. I have different gifts. Their gifts aren't worth any more than mine, and mine aren't worth any more than theirs. But it's coming to that understanding of what your gifts are. When you understand and recognize what your gifts are, and you work to cultivate those gifts, then there is no envy or jealousy of other people and their gifts. It's easier to celebrate them. So celebrate yourself this week. Release control to be perfect because you are already perfect. When you can cultivate your gifts from that perspective that I am already perfect, I have this gift and all I have to do is work at it to improve it. There's a sense of inner peace there because it's yours. They can't take it away. If you're curious to know what your gifts are and you don't know from an astrological perspective, then you can contact me for a reading at theweeklytransit.com. But this is a week of recognizing your gifts, releasing control, and allowing the flow to take place. It's almost like the flow is the water that is going to seep into your soil and allow the seed, the gift, to sprout to the surface. But it comes through compassion and authenticity, allowing you to be yourself. The Sun sextile Uranus is reimagining the dream and revolutionizing your self-worth. I hope this message is empowering to you, and I hope it carries you through the week ahead with a greater understanding and appreciation for the divine unique miracle that is you. Thank you for being here. Thank you for listening or watching. I'm grateful for your presence. And I'll look forward to reconnecting with you next week. Thank you for listening to the Weekly Transit. If you're curious to learn how these transits or any other transits may be affecting you, or if you're interested in learning more about your astrological code, contact me for a reading at theweeklytransit.com. This episode was produced by me, Scott Adrien. Music written by Ben Leinbach from Listen Deep by Amber Herzog-Lyman. Wishing you all the best as you ride the planetary waves.